The global herbal and botanical trade is accelerating toward an estimated valuation of $7 trillion by the year 2050. India possesses an enormous baseline of biological assets to feed this demand, cataloging over 15,000 known medicinal plant species within its borders. Inside the country, the domestic herbal market is expanding rapidly, driving a massive 38.5% compound annual growth rate. Major industrial operators are already moving immense volumes of botanical material to satisfy this internal machinery, proving the capacity for large-scale agricultural cultivation exists. Yet while the domestic pipeline thrives, the most lucrative economic prize, the high-margin global export market, remains largely out of reach. Simply possessing a wealth of raw biological material and local demand does not automatically translate into global economic dominance. While the global herbal trade represents a $120 billion market, India's share of that total remains limited to a mathematically insignificant 1.6%. Looking at the destination of these shipments reveals that nearly half, 46.4%, are absorbed by a single buyer, the United States. The bottleneck throttling India's growth is found in the physical state of the shipments. Two-thirds of the country's botanical exports are sold as bulk, unstandardized raw herbs. In international trade, these materials fall under Harmonized System Code 1211, a regulatory classification specifically reserved for basic, uncut, and raw plant matter. By definition, any product categorized under this classification has skipped the phase of industrial value addition. Trading under these basic commodity codes means the vast majority of the supply chain's actual economic value is surrendered to foreign processing facilities. To understand where value is captured, we have to trace the physical pipeline from the ground up, starting in the fields where these inputs originate. Industrially, this cultivation is categorized under National Industrial Classification Code 0128, which covers the growth of perennial aromatic and drug crops. This covers the active harvesting of high-value species like lemongrass, patchouli, and vetiver. The commercial utility of these species is not a function of their bulk weight, but of the concentration of volatile chemical compounds residing within the cell walls of the leaves, bark, and roots. In their freshly harvested, raw state, these materials are entirely useless to high-end manufacturing lines. Harvesting is the preliminary agricultural step. Realizing high industrial margins requires the systematic rupture of those cellular walls through large-scale mechanical extraction. Primary processing facilities deploy intense pressure, boiling, and steam distillation to chemically isolate the volatile compounds from the raw biomass. This diagram breaks down the taxonomy of botanical value addition. The baseline output is the extraction of pure essential oils. Solvent extraction isolates highly concentrated absolutes for perfumery. Resinoids act as fixatives, preventing dissipation, while concretes capture heavier, non-volatile waxes for commercial soaps. Each node on this flowchart requires specific chemical tolerances, isolated manufacturing environments, and specialized machinery. Targeting the correct compound for extraction is the mechanism that separates a low-tier agricultural commodity from a premium, high-margin industrial input. This flowchart maps the onward journey. After primary processing, compounds exist as intermediate raw oils and oleoresins. They are pushed into fractional synthesis, undergoing chemical modification to meet exact specifications, before routing directly into commercial flavorings, synthetic fragrances, and aromatherapy. This data points to the consumer markets that consume these inputs: global food conglomerates, commercial cosmetics, and the multi-billion-dollar toiletries industry. Furthermore, 20% of all modern pharmaceutical drugs rely on chemical derivations extracted from these specific plant species. Exponential economic growth in the botanical trade is generated within the controlled environment of this fractional synthesis pipeline. There is a critical vulnerability in this system. The extraction pipeline collapses if the raw botanical inputs lack genetic standardization and strict lot-to-lot quality control. The landscape required to address this exists in Tamil Nadu, which features 20 distinct agroclimatic clusters capable of supporting high-altitude aromatic crops. The solution involves introducing a gatekeeper at the start of the supply chain, the high-tech nursery. These specialized nurseries operate under controlled conditions, enforcing exact botanical standardization before a single seedling is distributed to local farmers. By grouping these standardized crops into geographic clusters, local extraction facilities are guaranteed a continuous supply of chemically consistent biomass. Building a reliable, high-margin chemical extraction sector requires a rigorously controlled agricultural foundation to feed it. Visualize this integrated model as a closed loop. Standardized plants leave the nursery, enter localized processing facilities, and emerge as specialized industrial inputs. These refined inputs bypass raw commodity markets, routing directly into pharmaceutical supply chains in the US and Europe. This scalable, industrially precise model stands in contrast to the historical baseline of selling unstandardized raw botanical matter through informal, fragmented networks. To capture a meaningful share of that $120 billion global trade, the reliance on raw botanical exports must be abandoned. Capital allocation has to shift away from basic agricultural harvesting and move toward integrated primary extraction and advanced nursery research. Moving from a 1.6% share to global dominance isn't about growing more plants. It's about engineering a value-added extraction pipeline that begins the moment a seed is planted.